Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're on Red Circle, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, also originating this episode on 5 Reasons YouTube. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. Also, check us out on 5reasonsports.com. Spell that one out. And check out our good friend, big Miami Heat fan, Mark Brown. You can find him at markbrownpa.com. That's markbrownpa.com. That's with a C. What can he do for you? Well, first, he can help establish an estate plan for you. If you have a family, you need an estate plan. What if something happens to you? You really want the state getting your money? You want some relative you don't like getting your money? No, you worked for it your entire life. So reach out to markbrownpa.com. He can give you all of the details in terms of how to get this set up. He'll give you the papers. It's not a hard process when he goes through it with you. And also, he does not make it expensive for you. Also, he's got a title company in-house called All Florida Title. So they can handle your closings there, anything along those lines, and particularly if you have an estate situation, he can help you with that because we know that real estate is a big part of people's estates. Also, bankruptcies, anything along those lines as a real estate attorney, reach out to him. It's markbrownpa.com. That's marcbrownpa.com, based in Lauderdale, can service all of South Florida. And now, today's episode.
Down to Biscayne.
Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got an all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. You can follow Brady Hawk at Brady Hawk 305. Also, check out our recent episodes, most of which are on Dame Lillard, assets, other things along those lines. And I'm sure we'll probably have another episode in the next 24 hours talking about this whole Kyle Lowry stretch provision and everything else, because Twitter is on fire right now with all kinds of accusations related to the Heat. So we will certainly get to that. But today we're going to focus on Summer League, which is starting. It actually starts out in California, Utah, ends up in Nevada and Las Vegas. That's the one that most people pay attention to. The Heat, I believe, play their first game on July 8th in Vegas, but they'll be playing before that. It starts in Vegas on the 7th. Everybody's talking, of course, about Wemby and Scoot and others, but the Heat are going to have a full Summer League roster out there, and actually should have one of their more interesting teams in the past few years. They had the team a few years ago with Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Hero as rookies. I believe that was 2019, pre-COVID. Duncan Robinson was on that team. That team ended up, I think, either winning or going all the way to the finals. Did very well. This year, the key guys we're talking about, of course, Nikola Jovic. Appears that he's going to play. Jaime Jaquez Jr., the rookie out of UCLA, it appears that he's going to play. We think Orlando Robinson and Jamal Kane may play as well. So that will be 4 pieces here. But we're going to go through first thing. Let's go through real quick, okay, before we get to the undrafteds. Just each of you give me one thing that you want to see from the 4 guys that I mentioned. Just pick one. So think about it, and we'll go forward. I'll start with Brady here. Nikola Jovic, one thing.
I think it's comparable kind of to what they did with Max Strus in Summer League. I think they're just going to put the ball in his hands a ton and let him run a bunch of different stuff. I was surprised that they did it a little bit, I guess, but in last year's Summer League, but it wasn't to the same extent. And he didn't play all the games either. So this is kind of the full one where I feel like they just throw him out there. And I think they'll just run a lot of 2-man actions with him and Jaquez. And just like we were talking about this last night on playback, it's like you can run Jovic as the ball handler, you can run Jovic as the screener, you can run one as the roller, one as the popper. Like you can do so many different things. But ultimately, I think the quick takeaway is that Jovic is going to have the ball in his hands a ton to score. He's going to have the ball in his hands to play make. I just want to see his decision making and see just what he can do in that range. And then I guess let him just see what he can do in different spots defensively as well. I know the focus is not really on defense in Summer League ever, just because it's a bunch of guys just go to get buckets. But look, they need to, if they're keeping Jovic, you got to put him in a core rotation. We were talking about this, Alex, and we were talking about this on playback as well. It's like, where does he play defensively? What is his role? Is he going to drop? Is he going to play as a backup 5? Is he going to switch? So I think we'll get some of those answers.
All right, let's go to this year's rookie, pick number 18, Triple J. What are you expecting to see from him? What do you want to see from him, Alex? Give me one thing.
Well, hopefully, like what Brady is talking about there, I would love to see Jaquez and Jovic two-man game, two-man action, all day long, spam it. I think that's what we would all love to see. The thing that leaves me a little bit skeptical is just like Brady mentioned it, the way that they used Jovic last year, which it felt like they used him very sparingly, just kind of compared to what you usually see out of Heat first round picks. I think in summer league, I know Ethan, you could probably speak more to that, but he had that one big game Jovic did last year, so I'm not sure what to expect from Jaquez, but I would just love to see him go out there and play his game, be aggressive, and show off all the things he can do. And I think he is just the thing that separates them. Obviously, is he's 22 coming in as opposed to Jovic coming in skinny and 19, not having graduated high school yet. So that leaves me with the idea that Jaquez is going to come out firing. I think he's going to show off the different aspects to his game, and hopefully it's just a whole lot of Jaquez and Jovic running stuff off of each other.
Brady, Jamal Kane, what would you like to see?
It's funny. We were talking about this last night too. I think it's, as much as I say Jovic is going to be kind of in the Max Juice role from a few years ago, I think Jamal Kane's in the exact David Highsmith role. The one of the things that they talked about more than anything with Highsmith was they go back to Summer League and they say he played a role in Summer League. Like, he wasn't one of those guys that was like playing above what he's going to do in the NBA. Like, the exact role that he played in the NBA, the exact role that he played previous to that is what he played in Summer League. Like, just defensively, spot up threes here and there in the corner, just a movement guy that can make off-ball cuts. Like, that's what he did. He didn't do a lot of flashy stuff in Summer League. It's exactly what I expect from Jamal Kane. I think it's just a lot of maybe push pace, get a couple lobs, get a couple, kind of show the spot up game, see kind of the defensive versatility stuff. But hey, if there's extra stuff in the bag, be sure to show it as well. But I think the primary thing is he's going to play a role that he ideally probably, if Miami's going to plug him in to a system throughout the season, especially when we're talking about these, not to get into trades, but these major deals where all these guys are constantly going out and you have to kind of formulate the rest of your rotation. These are the guys that are plugged in. You have to kind of utilize in a certain role.
All right, let's go to Orlando Robinson, and then after the break, we're going to get to some of the undrafteds. Alex, what do you want to see? Does he have a chance to contribute this year, do you think?
Well, I think he's got a chance just because we don't really know what's going to happen with their backup center position yet. I think Orlando showed a good amount of stuff last season when he did play. It kind of petered out a little bit after some time, but I think that's kind of what happens with certain undrafted rookies. Like, you didn't expect much out of him in the first place. And there was a time there last season where he was kind of your backup big man over Dwayne Dedmon. And that was obviously before they acquired Love and Zeller. So again, all of it depends on what happens with their roster. But I think just from him in Summer League, after having gotten all that playing time in NBA, to show off what you can do. And I know, it's very cliche, but we know what type of role he's going to play in the league as a big man. And I just think seeing him do the same things and just kind of killing these guys who are, for him, it should be kind of below him at this point, just because he had so many reps as an NBA backup big. He should be, giving these guys the work. It should not be too tough for him. I want to see him do great in Summer League.
All right, we're going to get to the undrafteds here, the guys that the Heat targeted and who maybe has a chance to pop. Before we do, I want to tell you about Ocean's Finest. You can find them at oceansfinest.com. We just actually got some great seafood from them. Our guy Alfredo Arteaga from 3 Yards Per Carry cooked up the mahi fingers. Did not save any for me, but that's a conversation for another time. Oceansfinest.com, and they've got a promo here, okay? $10 off this week only with the promo code Ocean's Finest Seafood. So that's Ocean's Finest Seafood, $10 off. And if you order now as you're hearing this, you absolutely will get it before July 4th. So get it for your cookouts, the crab, the lobster, the mahi. If you're looking on, you can see, well, we didn't order that from Ocean's Finest, but that's okay. That's pretty good stuff if you're watching on the YouTube channel. Why is Alf on there? Oceansfinest.com. That's Sean Rochester production. Check them out. This is the seafood that the cruise ships down here get, and also the 5-star restaurants get it directly to your door. I can tell you, when I ordered it a couple days ago, it was here in one day, and it arrived ready to go, but it also keeps longer than other seafood does. So make sure you order it today. Oceansfinest.com. Use that code Ocean's Finest Seafood. You get $10 off. All right, let's get to it. We talked a little bit about this guy on playback last night. I'll go to you first on him tonight, Alex. They tend to find these shooters, Duncan Robinson, Max Strus. Is Powell the next? Tell us everybody a little bit about him.
He does feel kind of like the next in line. Now, the thing is, and we're going to go through all these guys here, so I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but there is a whole lot of shooting in what they, the undrafted rookies that they picked up. Justin Powell feels like somebody who would, I think, fit in really, really nicely with their handoff sets and, has got a little bit more to him than just 3-point shooting. He makes quick decisions. He's a pretty good finisher, plays with, kind of some force when he's attacking the rim. But I do think all of that can be shown off in the context of those kind of handoff actions. I think he can make those types of reads and finish at the rim if they're running him off the line. He just seems like a pretty smart player. And I think, obviously a knockdown shooter. The way he plays seems like he would probably be the guy that they're going to develop next into that role. But like I said, there's a lot of candidates here. They don't all play the same game. So I'm not sure yet. But, I really like what Justin Powell shows. And I'm not sure. I think if I had to bet on who's getting the two-way, and again, I haven't seen that much of these guys. I don't know anything compared to the guys that are going to be seeing him all the time and seeing him at Summer League in the Heat organization. But I think Powell is probably one of the more likely guys to end up with, an Exhibit 10 or a two-way, just a way to end up on this training camp roster just because of what he can do and the way that you can kind of plug and play him into a role right away. And I think that's what a lot of these guys are about is, you find a skill set that you like, that you feel like you can develop. That's kind of the Heat's history with undrafted guys before. And I think Justin Powell's skill set is one that you can plug and play into what they already do.
Brady, Powell was kind of your guy too when we came out of this, but give me one other from the shooter group that you think could pop here.
So it's funny. I know not to get ahead as well because there are 4 shooters, but it's funny because all of them are different. Like they all do different things in terms of they're going to utilize them totally differently. Like to Alex's point, Justin Powell does spot up stuff, does the handoff stuff, but also has played on balls. Probably by far the best passer among the 4 shooters. But in terms of, I guess, another guy that could pop would probably be Drew Peterson, just because there's a lot to his I guess there's more to his bag as a scorer, just because he's done a lot of on-ball stuff. He's done stuff from different spots of the floor. I guess that we just don't know where the floor would be, I guess, more so. I feel like that's the word, like a Justin Powell is like a safe bet, it feels like. And that's what they've always made, those safe bets on shooters because you know what you're going to get. Drew Peterson's more of like there's a wide variety of what you could possibly get, and I think that's what Summer League's going to be for. So we'll see what they're able to do. There's Taylor Funk, who I think is more of like he reminds me more of Max in a way, just because he's like a tough shot maker. I don't think he's ever seen, we talked about with Max, like the not seeing a contest. Like he just gets the ball up, and that's what they liked in Max when they first picked him up. So that just intrigues me just because of that little tie-in. And then the 4th guy is Trenton Master, which is the smallest of them. I think he's like 6'2" guard, which is not usually what they'd go for in a shooter. But he's done a lot of on-ball stuff. He does a lot of pull-up stuff. He does a lot of that. But he would be, I feel like, more of the long shot in terms of they would have to probably really like him, and he'd have to show on Summer League just because of the stuff on paper that we're originally seeing. But, yeah, I'd say after Justin Powell, Drew Peterson would be the guy that can maybe catch somebody's eye in Summer League, and all of a sudden he ends up on a two-way.
Now, we think that we talk about 4 starters in the lineup if they go with the 4 veteran guys, which usually is what they do. I say veteran guys, I'm including their drafted rookie as one of them. The guys that are under contract to them are likely to be Robinson, Kane, Jovic, and Jaquez. So we're assuming the 5th is going to be Booyah, right, as a point guard?
Yeah, I would.
Did either of you see enough to think that he can be a backup? A backup guard, rotation guard type player that, say, Gabe emerged as a couple of years ago?
I mean, it's tough. I feel like he's the type of player that can make a run for a two-way, just because if they need an extra guards on the bottom of the rotation or bottom of the roster, it's not crazy to say. He'll have to talk about Jaquez taking his number. I think that's going to be something they might have to run 1v1s for that to get that back. But look, he played. Look, he's another guy that played this season a decent bit. Like he played in the regular season, had a lot of isolation moments. I mean, there's still question marks about the shot. They still like their defensive guards that can move around and make plays. So hey, look, another year in their system. See what he's been able to kind of develop over the last few months. I don't think it's crazy to say that. Especially look, as much as we're talking about the undrafted guys, I think it's even more important to note that they have 3 two-ways now. So it's like,
right,
this is something that Miami's going to love. They're going to love this. And what is it? I think 100 games total they have with it. Like I think there's a limit with each two-way guy. So it's like they're going to utilize each one of these.
Alex, when you look at Marcus, they've had a bunch of developmental point guards, right, that haven't really panned out. Marcus Garrett, some of that was injury related, but it was also shot related. He had the defensive pedigree. Briante Weber, they brought back like 6 times. Gabe's really the only one recently who has stuck. Is there another point guard on this roster if Booyah doesn't?
It's interesting that you asked that. And by the way, I do think I agree with Brady that Bouye could have a place on this roster. He showed some offensive juice to him last season. I kind of like the way he plays. He is a little small, but I do like the way he plays. But it's a good question you asked, though, and it's a good way to get into one of the next guys here that they picked up after the draft. His name is Chase Aldige. He played for Northwestern, and he's 6'4", 200 pounds, and was a really good defensive guard over there. I think that's another guy I would maybe bet some money on if I could, that would end up with a training camp spot or something of that sort, just because he seems like he is the next guy, the next defensive guard in line for the Heat to try out here, especially now that it doesn't seem like Marcus Garrett is going to be back. Aldige's got some offensive game to him. I know Brady did that thread the other day going through all the guys, and he put some clips up of him going at Jaime Jaquez, and I think that's a guy to really look into. I want to see what he can do. He seems like one of those bulldog point guards, good size, has some creation to him. Don't think he's a bad shooter. Don't think he's necessarily a good shooter either, but it's not as bad as some of the other defensive-minded guards they had in the past, not to get into specifics, but I think Chase Aldige is that guy that's next in line for them as the bulldog point guard.
All right, we're going to get into the bigs and some of the bigger wings as we go forward here. I do want to mention one more sponsor. Our friends over at Prize Picks, our daily fantasy partner. Use that code 5, F-I-V-E. We know there's no NBA right now, but actually you're going to be able to play Summer League on there too. That's one of the reasons we're mentioning it here. Also WNBA, NFL futures, MLS. I'm sure Messi will be there on the board whenever he finally starts playing for Inter, golf, tennis, esports, boxing. It's all on there. So check it out at prizepicks.com. Again, that rollover, there is no rollover. You basically get to use the money right away. This is not like the other sites. Use that code 5, F-I-V-E, and download it from the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store, or prizepicks.com. All right, let's get to the bigger wings and to the bigs. Orlando Robinson, there, we've talked about him already. Jovic is going to play some of those minutes. They typically will rotate in 3 or 4 bigs here just to kind of get a look at everybody. We saw what Yurt did a couple of years ago. Hasn't really translated, in part because of the injuries and just some defensive lapses to real playing time with the Heat. Is there a Yurt on this roster, Brady?
Yeah, and I'd say it's Patrick Gardner. I think that's the one guy that, like, if people were looking up names and looking up YouTube videos, it's like kind of the one that pops just because he's just a different prospect. He's a 6'11" big that can shoot. He did a lot of stuff with mismatches and kind of in the low post. I don't know how much that will translate. I mean, he still has size. He could probably do it enough, and there's still questions if he could do it enough with certain touch around the rim and all that stuff that Yurt probably had a little bit more of early on. But he's probably a better shooter, and he's done more of that type of stuff. There's questions, I guess, with the defense. I think I was looking at some of the numbers. He shot 38% from 3 last year. But he's not like one of those bigs that has like those slow wind up jumpers. Like he actually has a quick trigger that it's like so quick. It's just it's intriguing to like utilize, especially they don't usually have this early on. So that's just a guy that's going to be interesting. I know in his system over there, he was utilized in a lot of the ways that Miami utilizes their bigs in terms of he ran a lot of handoffs for guys. He did a lot of that type of stuff. So that's just a guy that we're going to talk about the next guy in line because there's 2 guys here. There's Patrick Gardner, that's the 6'11" big that I think is going to play behind Orlando and play in his mold. And there's another guy that I think we're going to get to right here, which is Javon Franklin, which I was saying last night is going to play exactly in the Jamal Kane role. Like they have these molds of players that they just put like in a bracket together and say, we want this type of build, we want this type of build, and we'll see who comes out on top. And I feel like we're seeing that with this roster so far.
Alex, what do you like about Gardner specifically? And give me a couple other names here to watch in the front court.
Well, I wanted to talk about Gardner just for the same reasons because he's really intriguing. He played for Marist, and then when you look at the clips, like it's just one of those things where it's like, where did this guy come from? But it's really intriguing, like Brady said, just the quick shot release. It's very, very quick for a big man. And it looks very fluid. So I think that part of his game is kind of that's going to be the skill set that they go after. But just in general, he plays like a skilled big man. And honestly, I get some Kelly vibes from him. And I know Kelly Olynyk is somebody who has been brought up, by Leif and by Barry Jackson as somebody who the Heat could bring back. And I think Sam Gardner is kind of, he gives you a little bit of that, where he's a skilled big man who can really shoot it. I think Gardner has a much quicker release point, but I just think he knows how to play within an offense. The thing is, he has to put on, I feel like, a little bit of size, but I think there's defensive concerns with him and how well he can, I think, guard fives, because he's probably going to be a 5 in the league. But offensively, like, he can do a few different things, and I just like the way that he kind of processes the game in general. He gives you a little bit of everything on the offensive side of the floor, and I'm interested to see where that one goes, because we got to see how the roster shakes out. But man, they might have a place for him, just a kind of a shooting big. If you don't acquire another one of those, let's say Kevin Love walks, maybe you bring on a Sam Gardner if he shows out. Not that he's going to be in your rotation or anything like that, but he's got an intriguing skill set for a big.
There might be a lot of guys who are in their rotation if they do the all-in trade for Dame. So we don't really, we don't know at that point. I'll just finish here and I'll get your final thoughts on this stuff, guys. And we're about a week away from seeing this team on the floor, maybe just a little bit more than that. Is this team, because it always seems to me like it's about the undrafted guys that may pop, but it's also about the guys who are going to make the guys that they really care about the most, which are their first round picks typically, or the players that they've invested time into. They're going to give them the best possible chance to succeed. Do you think that this team will do that, Brady?
100%. And that's why I think the biggest difference is like last year was like basically all undrafted guys, because it was only Jovic essentially, and he didn't play.
He didn't even play the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like Orlando Robinson, these other guys that they were working through, which is not what they wanted to do, I guess. But yeah, I think this is an ideal situation that you have two guys that you literally want to see make decisions, put the ball in their hands, see how they can score in different spots of the floor. So that's the part that's going to be interesting. And then it's about, the funny thing is the other areas, the undrafted guys, you're not looking for a crazy on-ball creator. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for a guy like Javon Franklin who plays a Jamal Kane role, that's a defensive guy that's switchy, that could do some of the other stuff, or one of these off-ball spot-up shooters that hits a bunch of threes off the catch. Like, they're not going to take a ton of on-ball reps, I'll say, like away from those guys, and that's why I think it makes sense. But I'll say, like, the final thoughts, the one guy that we didn't talk about was Caleb Daniels out of Villanova, and it's just one of those guys that, like, look, he's not like a pretty player in terms of his play style. Like, he's a 6'4" guard. Like, his 3-point numbers were not jumping off the page. He does a lot of his offensive work like in the post. So it's like not something that would make sense like on paper. But Miami's always been like in the dirty work that doesn't make sense type of players. They always kind of like trend toward those guys. And I just think he's interesting. I just think he's an interesting prospect that he has like a good form and jumper in general that Miami will say, oh, we can develop that. Like that, there's no hitch. There's no problems there. We can do a little bit of that. There's a physicality to him in a way that he drives strong. He plays really strong that I just know. I'm not going to say he's going to be getting rotation minutes, but I just think Miami's going to really like his play style in summer league. And it's another guy that's just going to play a role. He's not taking anything away from these Joviches or Jaquez's of the world. They just got to play around him. So it'll just be interesting to see, because I really do think they actually have a decent squad in summer league this year. In terms of last year, it was just a bunch of guys that they didn't have a point guard. They didn't have a ball handler. It was like, it was such a mess last year when Jovic wasn't playing. So this one feels a little bit more solid.
Yeah. And again, there may be not rotation spots necessarily, but there may be spots at the back end of the roster. All right. We will have more content coming up later today. We're also going to do some stuff on Playback. So check us out there. Make sure you're signed up there, playback.tv/5RSN. Thanks to our sponsors. Use that Ocean's Finest deal. Get your $10 off this week prior to July 4th. MarkBrownPA.com. Reach out to the man. He will help you out for sure. If you need a real estate attorney, he's the guy to go to. And Prize Picks, use the code 5.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.